So we are nearly to the end of the NFL season. Only 3 games remaining. The Packers sitting at 10-4. And I want to talk about the outlook for the Packers after last night's game against the Seahawks. Has anything changed in my mind regarding this team, regarding the playoffs, their chances in the playoffs, things like that? And I think that what we've witnessed from this team so far this season is one of the better teams in the NFL. When you're 10-4, that clearly shows that for the most part, you're a very good team. I think the question people may have is when you look at the Packers' 4 losses, they are against some of those better teams in the NFC, which they will probably have to face at least 1 or 2 of those teams if they go on a long playoff run in January. And so that's sort of the question is, are they able to sort of get over that hump against some of these top-tier teams? And if we look to last night against the Seahawks, that's a team that's a pretty good team. They're definitely not at that top-tier level like the Lions, like the Eagles, like the Vikings, but they are a really good team. And I think some things we saw last night from the Packers is something that can give you some confidence into what this team could do come playoff time. And the biggest thing for me, I mean, there's a lot of ifs here. You know, if they do this right, if they do that right. And after seeing last night the pass rush finally come alive, that's one area of the defense where if that shows up come playoff time, this is going to be a very difficult team to beat because when you look at the Packers offense, it's not a problem. In the past 4 games, the Packers have put up 30-plus points in every game. And even in these losses early in the season to the Eagles, to the Vikings, to the Lions, outside of maybe that one earlier Lions game, the Packers have still put up a ton of points. And I think the main issue has been the defensive performances in those games. And the thing is, against some of these teams like the Eagles, like the Lions, they're going to put up a ton of points. And so that's sort of where you need your offense to be nearly perfect. And the Packers last night against the Seahawks, they still put up 30 points. They got off to a fast start, put up 20 in the first half. The second half wasn't quite as explosive. They weren't dominating quite like they were in the first half. And even in light of that, even with them not playing a great second half like they did the first half, they still put up 30 points. And so there's not much more you can ask for your offense to consistently put up 30-plus points game after game after game. And looking at Jordan Love, 4 weeks ago or so, all the talk was, can Jordan Love fix this interception problem? Can he start to play some clean football? Because when you have a quarterback who makes bad decisions consistently game after game, it does make you worry and think, well, if that happens in a close game situation, then it can be tough to win some of those games. And we've seen Jordan Love really pick that up, throwing no interceptions in 4 straight games. And so the Packers have, a lot of pieces, a lot of things in place as a team that I think you need to go on a deep playoff run. You need a top-tier quarterback, an elite quarterback. The Packers have that. Jordan Love has shown in his second season here that he's worth the $55 million per year. I know there are some people questioning during his times of throwing interceptions, how good he really is. But just like last year around this time, he has started to play some of his best football, and that's really all you can, ask for, hope for in this time of the season for your quarterback to play some of his best football of the entire season. So elite quarterback, check. Elite running back, check. The Packers have one of the best rushing attacks in the league. I think last night in the second half, they had more trouble running the ball. And so, hopefully going forward, they can do that consistently. But they still, I think, were effective enough in the running game to set up the play action pass, things like that. So you got a great quarterback. You got a great running back. Your offensive line last night played really solid. It wasn't perfect. I was looking at some of the numbers, and the Packers pass rush or offensive line last week against the Lions, they allowed pressure about 37% of the time according to NFL Pro. This week it was 32%. So it was just a 5% decrease. So not a massive decrease, but I think last week, early on in the game against the Lions, they were just blitzing a ton, and they were just getting there so quickly that Jordan Love did not have time to really find a open receiver. And it feels like this week more of the pressures were, took a little bit longer, weren't quite as fast as those pressures last week. And so Jordan Love was able to sort of maneuver around the pocket, escape, make some good throws. And that's one thing about Jordan Love that I think is almost a little bit underrated, is his ability to extend plays and escape sacks, escape pressures, because I still think right now the Packers have allowed about the second fewest sacks in the NFL. And so when you have the Packers offensive line playing at a pretty good level, which I would say they did last night, this offense is pretty tough to stop. Now, there's always things I think you can clean up. But when your offense 4 straight games putting up 30-plus points, there's not that much more you can ask for because, of course, every defense coming in here is scheming to shut down the offense, and they consistently have not been able to. So you would love the team to score on every single drive, but the defense is paid as well. So I still think it's been a very good showing from the Packers overall. And I think just looking towards the playoffs, if the Packers can get the kind of defense we saw last night, then I do think the Packers can go on a Super Bowl run. That's sort of the question, though, because the Seahawks aren't the caliber of offense like the Detroit Lions. They're not the caliber of offense of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think that's what we've seen from the Packers defense so far this year is facing off against some of these top-tier teams. The defense has struggled. In 4 games, the Packers played teams with top 10 scoring offenses. In the Eagles, Lions twice, and the Vikings, they allowed 30-plus points 3 of 4 times. And so it looks to me like the Packers defense, they can play pretty good against even good teams, but when it comes to these really great offenses, I still do have some questions about the defense overall. And so that's sort of the if for me. Can this pass rush play like they did against the Seahawks last night? When we face off against, the Lions, when you face off against the Eagles, teams like that, can they still sort of keep this level up, or is the talent on those teams too great for this Packers defense to be able to play like they did tonight? And that's sort of the question I still have for this Packers team, because as I said, if we get this defense from last night, the way they played, then this is a team that will be tough to stop just because of how good the Packers offense is. And I think the good thing when you look at playoff time is you want to be able to have an offense, a quarterback where you know that, let's say you're down to score 2 scores, that your quarterback can sort of rally your team, bring them back to life. That's what you need out of a quarterback come playoff time, because you're not going to get a perfect scenario every single game. And no matter who the Packers are playing, odds are there's going to be a game if the Packers play 2 or 3 playoff games where the defense probably doesn't have a shutout day when you're facing some of these top-tier offenses. And so I do think the Packers are going to need to have a offensive performance where it's even better than it was last week against the Lions, where you still put up 31 points, but it was too little too late and you lose by 3. So I do think the offense is going to have to put up potentially, like a 34, 37-point game to beat some of these other offenses. And the question is, can they do it? I think the answer is 100% yes. And so that's why I'd say, when you look at lots of teams around the league, I do think the Packers have the necessary pieces to go on a playoff run, because some other teams who don't have the same level of quarterback, it's just you just lose the confidence in what they're able to do, because if you're down 2 scores and you're a team that doesn't have one of these quarterbacks that can really rally and come back from a deficit, it's going to be tough for you to win games. And I think back to Patrick Mahomes earlier in his career in some of those playoff games. There was one year, I can't remember the year, where the Chiefs were down by like 2-3 scores in a couple games in the playoffs, and yet Mahomes was able to just sort of rally them back from those deficits. And that's the good thing about Jordan Love. We've seen it this year that even if you're down 2 scores, Jordan Love can bring you back. And I think back to that Vikings game, the first game Jordan Love was back from the knee injury. He was definitely being pressured a ton, getting blitzed a ton, and he was still able to nearly bring the Packers back. I think that game was 31-29. Something like that. It was close to that score. I'm forgetting the exact number right now. That may be right. But the Packers were down by like 20 or so points in the first half. And so that's the good thing. Even if the Packers are down, let's say, 17-3, 21-7 in a playoff game, sure, that's not how you want it to go. You'd rather them start off fast. But we've seen the Packers can really get things going. So I think the Packers do have a lot of the pieces in place to be a dangerous playoff team. And the real question is, can it come together and can they do it consistently? I think the answer is yes. You even look to the playoff game last year where the Packers lost. They were very close. If Anders Carlson hadn't missed that one field goal, could have been a different game. And so I do think the Packers are in a very good spot. And I think that the great thing here in Green Bay is that once again, we saw it in the first year with Jordan Love. he's able to take them to the playoffs. And there was talk, there were questions. Well, can he do it again? Was it just a great streak of games he went on? And is it something that he's not going to be able to sort of replicate in his second season? Will teams figure him out? The answer is no. And so I think as a Packers fan, it feels good sitting here, sort of like taking a step back and recognizing, okay, once again, the Packers have a quarterback and a team where, your thoughts are Super Bowl and not, oh, wow, isn't it awesome that we're 10-4? I think Packers fans I'm pumped that the Packers are 10-4. But there are lots of teams where, man, if they could be 10-4 right now, they would give anything to be 10-4. So I think that's the thing where you take a step back and recognize how good this Packers team really has been, and that once again the expectations in Green Bay are Super Bowl. So that's at least a good place to be in overall. And so I think looking at the Seahawks game, my just big question still is, can this defense show up against top-tier offenses? That's my question, because the Seahawks offense last night, not a top-tier offense, I would say. So it's promising. It's good to see. I just want to see it against some of these top-tier offenses. And looking at the Packers' final 3 games, I would say the one top-tier offense would be the Minnesota Vikings. So that'll be a good test to see what this Packers defense is made of before the playoffs come around. The Packers haven't clinched yet, but looking at some numbers, I saw there's like a 99% chance they make the playoffs now based on certain simulations. So it's looking pretty good from a playoff perspective, but that's sort of my big question here. And then, we look at, is Jaire going to come back healthy? Things like that. Because if he does, then I think that my confidence, of course, in this team will go up a large degree. But those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.